Today we're going to be looking at Manic Panic Professional in the color Serpentine green. So first thing you might notice, my swatches are labeled 1 through 12. Do just want to say that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do different video clips and pictures and such throughout the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. My swatches are not virgin hair, so that means they've been chemically colored, treated, or bleached at some point in their existences. 1 is pink, 2 is gray, 3 is a mid-tone natural red, 4 is a very soft black, and then 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So I will start by taking the dye directly from the container, and I will apply it to the top of each swatch. Then some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I will do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. Now this does recommend to do it over wet hair, so I did wet the swatches first. Also, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently, so please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you.
The same without you now. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down, 'cause nothing feels the same without you now. What's the point in dreaming if I lose my voice? The second I get caught by you, I wanted you to know that I'm afraid, but we can make it go away. I hope you hear the things I say when I'm choked up next to you. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. Oh, nothing feels the same without you now. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down, 'cause nothing feels the same without you now. And all my friends are wasting time, and I'm afraid I'm wasting mine. But if you talk to me
So for the diluted section, I do first want to give a little bit of a warning that I don't believe this stuff is supposed to be mixed with conditioner, which is what I do, and it is what I did. And I'm doing a 8-to-1 ratio, so that's going to be 1 part of the dye to 8 parts diluter. Now, the reason I say that is because this is a gel, and what I find in the past is oftentimes when you're mixing 2 different textures together, it can kind of compromise how it takes to the hair. So this is one of the times I would definitely recommend just straight up using the diluter that is supposed to be used with this. But I also thought it couldn't hurt just to see what would happen, so I did decide to use conditioner anyways. And since this is a professional formula, a gel formula just in general, I am a lot less educated on how this stuff works, which is why I'm following the directions a little bit more by wetting the hair. And I'm also going to follow the directions more by letting it sit on the hair for the recommended 30 minutes. I will then rinse it out, and then when it's done air drying, I will meet you back here and we can do some comparisons. All right, quick reminder to everyone that, again, my swatches are not virgin hair. Basically, virgin hair tends to be less porous, which means it will have a harder time taking and then holding on to color. So even if it does take, sometimes it will wash out faster. So how my swatches turned out doesn't necessarily mean it's how it will turn out on your hair. And part of why I say that in every video now, but part of why I say that is because I actually do see a difference on all of the swatches. So I do think my swatches not being virgin hair does play a role in that. Also, if there's any professionals out there who understands on a chemical level how stuff like this works, feel free to let us all know. So even though they market this like it's a professional version of Manic Panic, I didn't have to mix it with a peroxide or anything, yet it still took really well. And I almost am wondering if it has something to do with the gel texture. I did Splat a couple weeks ago and that one had the same consistency, like a gel. And my theory with that was that it works by staining instead of absorbing. And so with this being a gel as well, I'm kind of wondering if I'm right, but I don't know. So anyone out there with experience, even with just having this on your hair, feel free to let everyone know what that was like. Also, generally speaking, any of my swatches in this part of the videos will tend to look a tiny bit darker than they will in natural light. So in the natural lighting, they should look a little bit lighter than this. I feel like they look a little bit dark in here. So number one originally was pink. That one looks maybe just a touch more cool tone, but barely. It does look kind of in the same family as this does, but definitely a little bit more muted than maybe like the blonde swatch is. I do see a difference on the diluted section, which by the way, I'm happy to see that the conditioner didn't ruin the formula too much. I'm still unsure how gel mixing with conditioner or regular diluters differs, but at least it didn't turn out horrible on my swatches. So I do see it on the bottom, but there's still a lot of pink coming through. So I would say you probably would want to just use the direct dye version or don't dilute it as much as I did at the very least, if you're trying to cover pink anyways. 2 was the gray. The critique is a little bit similar. It's slightly more cool tone than the blonde swatch and more muted, basically. Kind of the same. The biggest difference is more so on the diluted section versus like the number 1 swatch. It's the same critique in the sense that it is a little bit more cool tone, a little bit more ashy than the blonde, but obviously there was no pink in the hair beforehand, so there's no pink as well. So if your hair is absorbent enough, which gray hair tends to be one of the hardest types of hair to dye, it could turn out like that for you. 3 was the natural red. When it comes to the direct dye, I'm actually going to lump it in with number 5 and 6. So this green over slightly darker hair actually still looks green. Now sometimes when I put colors over dark hair, the dark hair will shine through, so it'll still look brown with a change of undertone, but actually over these it straight up looks green, just a very dark green. So that's pretty cool. The diluted sections, on the other hand, I would say definitely a lot more brown coming through, so you lose the green a little bit, but it still looks very green. It just kind of turns it to more of like a mossy, naturally kind of green. Nature green, maybe, is what I could call it. So 4 was the soft black. Now it wasn't a jet black, so please keep that in mind if you're doing this over your hair. And I did say I see a difference, but it's not a very wildly different, wait. It's not that big of a difference. It's the top looks a little bit darker than the bottom does. There might be a slight undertone difference, but overall it's so dark that it still looks like a soft black, at least over the top, and the bottom I don't see a difference on the diluted section. So the 6 also turned out kind of interesting. Sometimes I think certain undertones kind of struggle to take certain colors. So it still definitely looks green on the top, but it doesn't look quite as vibrant as it does on 5 and 7. I don't know if it's just because of the lightness of the hair, because sometimes I feel like when a dye is put over a hair color that's in the same lightness or like similar lightness, they kind of combat each other a little bit. I don't know if that's making a lot of sense. Essentially, it just doesn't look as saturated over the number 6 as it does on even 5 and then 7. And even the diluted section struggled to take it. It could also be just the person's hair isn't as porous, which is why I recommend a strand test. I would say 7 is where you start to see a little bit more of a cooler tone in the green coming through. Over the 5 and 6, I think it looks slightly more warm. I mean, there's still definitely a coolness there. It's not like a super, super warm green, but you do lose a little bit of coolness over the browns that you start to see coming back over 7. Diluted section, kind of the same thing. A little bit more cool. Definitely see the green, but I definitely see a lot of the dark blondish, light brown coming through. So as the swatches get lighter, the dye gets lighter until we get to number 9. And then interestingly, on 10 and 11, it kind of goes back to being darker. I think those swatches were probably more porous, so they were able to absorb the color. I think those swatches were a little bit more porous, so I think they were able to take the color a little bit better. But essentially, And if I had to choose a favorite diluted section, I think I would pick number 11. It just looks the most intentional, I would say. Has a really nice coverage of the green, whereas on 9 and 10, I still see some of those natural tones coming through, which doesn't necessarily look bad. It just looks a little bit more maybe like a color faded over those swatches. And then 12, I think it covered really nicely on 12 as well. It's just a lot more muted, and you get a little bit more saturation on the number 11 that I really like. Almost actually looks a little bit more green. I think if you were to put it next to something that's more green, it would still look like a really nice cool green, but next to 11, it for some reason actually looks a little bit warmer. All right, so as for comparisons, so far, I haven't done all Manic Panic colors, obviously, but I have done a handful of greens, and none of the greens in their regular collection that I've done so far are a match, which is kind of nice. You get a good variety. And I was kind of torn between two different greens to compare, but I ended up going with Manic Panic's Venus Envy. So this is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, and comparable to number 9. So Venus Envy leans slightly more warm in comparison. I would still say Venus Envy is a cool green, but it just shows how cool the Serpentine green does actually lean. And they both are kind of in the same lightness, which I would put in kind of the medium category, not super light, not super dark. The other one from Manic Panic I was considering was actually Enchanted Forest, but that one leaned a lot more cool. So the Serpentine green would be kind of right in the middle. It's more cool than the Venus Envy, but it's definitely a little bit more warm than the Enchanted Forest. The other comparison I wanted to look at today is Directions in the color Alpine green. This is comparable to number 12, 11, 10, and comparable to number 9. So I figured if you did want to see what this looks like next to an even more cool tone green, the Alpine green would be a good choice. And I feel like I have similar things to say. The Alpine green is about the same lightness, so it's like a medium tone along with the Serpentine green. It's just leans a lot more blue in comparison. So hopefully you can see a little bit of the warmth now in the Serpentine green, because it may have looked a little bit cool in the beginning, which it is still cool. It's just not as cool as you can get for a green, I guess is what I mean. And if you're interested in seeing any of these comparisons, I will link the videos down below for you to see as well. Sometimes these bluish greens, though, can be kind of nice if you have hair that struggles to take color, because they tend to be really, really pigmented. So I will link this down below for you to watch. So now I'd like to get into the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything past this point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting.
At least this is an okay barn for running into you. It's an awful house, and I wanted to get you out. I'm working on a plan right now to come through. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. Oh, nothing feels the same without you now. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. 'Cause nothing feels the same without you now. What's the point in dreaming if I lose my voice? The second I get caught by you, I wanted you to know that I'm afraid, but we can make it go away. I hope you hear the things I say when I'm choked up next to you. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down. Oh, nothing feels the same without you now. I've waited for 'cause nothing feels the same without you now. I've waited for a lifetime for you to calm down, 'cause nothing feels the same without.
I hope this video helps. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very, 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 very much to my patrons, and thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.